The leather had worn soft over the years, but the number hadn't faded. 68, inked in precise military stencil beneath a black dagger, whose serrated edge looked sharp enough to cut through the fabric of memory itself. Elena Maddox sat in the corner booth of Scorpion's Den, her back-to-the-wall old habit, nursing a ginger ale she hadn't touched in 20 minutes. The neon sign outside flickered against the October rain, casting rust-colored shadows across cracked asphalt and broken dreams. Inside, cigarette smoke curled beneath low-hanging lights, while a jukebox played something gritty and forgotten. It was the kind of place where questions weren't asked and cameras didn't work, where people came to disappear for a few hours. Ella had come here for the quiet, for the anonymity, for the blessed relief of being nobody special in a room full of people who didn't know her name. She should have known better. The 12-hour shift at Riverside General Hospital had been brutal even by Carson City standards. 3 cardiac arrests before noon. 2 DOAs wheeled in from a highway pileup, their injuries too catastrophic for even her skilled hands to reverse. And the worst, the one that sat like lead in her chest, a 7-year-old with internal bleeding from a bicycle accident. She'd done everything right. Every protocol, every procedure, every desperate measure in her arsenal. The kid had died anyway, small and broken on a table too big for his fragile frame, while his mother's screams echoed down sterile corridors. The prosthetic leg beneath her scrub pants ached where the titanium met scar tissue, a phantom pain that never quite left a ghost that haunted the space where flesh and bone used to be. She'd been on her foot for the entire shift, and now the junction point throbbed with each heartbeat, reminding her that some wounds never fully heal. They just learn to live alongside you. Elle shifted her weight, trying to find a position that didn't send electric jolts up her residual limb. The ginger ale sat untouched because even lifting the glass required energy she didn't have. Outside, the rain came harder, drumming against windows, like fingers tapping out Morse code messages she was too tired to translate. That's when she heard them. The rumble started low and deep, a throaty growl that vibrated through the bar's foundation. Motorcycles. Multiple bikes, their engines throttling in synchronized menace. The sound grew louder, closer, until it felt like the building itself was shaking. Then silence as the engines cut, followed by the crunch of boots on gravel. The door swung open, and they entered like they owned not just the room, but the oxygen itself. 7 men, leather vests marked with a coiled serpent patch, the Iron Scorpion's local chapter. The kind of men who measured respect in cubic inches of displacement and intimidation in decibels. They moved with the casual arrogance of people who'd never been told. No, never been challenged, never faced real consequences for the space they took up in the world. The largest one led the way. 6'3", easy, maybe 260 of muscle, gone soft around the edges. His beard was braided down his chest, gray threaded through black like storm clouds. Arms sleeved in faded ink, the kind of prison tattoos that told stories better left unread. He scanned the room like a warden counting inmates, his gaze sweeping across the handful of other patrons who suddenly found their drinks fascinating. His eyes landed on Ella and stuck. "Well, well," he announced to his crew voice, carrying that particular mixture of confidence and menace that came from years of never being corrected. "Looks like we got ourselves some company." His brothers laughed. It wasn't humor, it was permission. Elle's fingers tightened slightly around her glass, but her face remained blank. She'd learned a long time ago that reactions were invitations, that showing fear was like bleeding in shark-infested waters. So she kept her expression neutral, her breathing steady, her posture relaxed despite every instinct screaming at her to assess exits and identify weapons. The big one crossed the room in 4 heavy steps and dropped into the seat across from her without asking. His breath smelled like cheap whiskey and cheaper decisions. Up close, she could see the scars on his knuckles, the yellowed teeth, the eyes that had seen violence and liked what they saw. "You look lonely, sweetheart," he said, spreading his arms across the booth like he was claiming territory. "Name's Bull, Vincent Kruger, but everybody calls me Bull. You know why they call me that?" Elle's voice came out flat neutral, giving him nothing to grab onto. "I'm not interested. That's not friendly." Bull leaned back, smile widening. "We don't bite, not unless you ask nice." 2 more bikers drifted closer, flanking the table. The bartender, a rail-thin man with hollow eyes and the survival instincts of someone who'd learned when to look away, found something urgent to clean at the far end of the bar. "I'm just here for a drink," Ella said quietly. "Then I'm leaving." "See, that's the thing." Bull's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You walk into our spot, you show some respect. Maybe buy us around, maybe smile a little." He gestured at her scrubs, stained with the shift's accumulated evidence, coffee betadine, something that might have been blood. What are you, a nurse? You're supposed to be nice, right, caring? I'm off the clock. One of the other's younger face, still spotted with acne scars, snorted. She's got an attitude, Bull. I like that in a woman. Means she's got fire. Bull's eyes traveled down to where Elle's leg rested beneath the table. The prosthetic was hidden under fabric, but something in the way she sat. The slight asymmetry of her posture must have registered. His expression shifted, taking on that particular cruel edge that some men get when they sense vulnerability. What happened there? He pointed with his chin. Accident, bet it was an accident. Bet you're real fragile under all that tough girl act. Elle's jaw tightened imperceptibly. It's none of your business. I'm trying to be nice here. Bull's hand moved across the table, fingers reaching for hers. Thick, callous, the kind of hands that had broken things and people before. Let me buy you something stronger. Help you relax. Forget about whatever's got you looking so serious. Elle pulled her hand back. No, thank you. The temperature in the room dropped 5 degrees. No. Bull repeated the word like it tasted wrong in his mouth. You hear that, boys? She's declining, respectfully. The others laughed on cue, trained seals performing for their master. Elle started to slide out of the booth. Her prosthetic legs shifted beneath her weight, and for a split second, just one heartbeat, her balance wavered. Not much, not even noticeable to most people. But Bull caught it. She saw recognition flash across his face, saw him register the mechanical movement, the slight hitch in her motion. His hands shot out and grabbed her wrist. Where are you going? The playful tone was gone, now replaced by something harder, meaner. We're just getting started, just getting to know each other. Let go. Elle's voice didn't rise, didn't shake. It was the tone she'd used in field hospitals when telling soldiers they were going to lose a limb, calm, professional, final. Bull's grip tightened, fingers circling her wrist like a manacle. He stood yanking her partway out of the booth, pulling her close enough that she could see the burst capillaries in his nose, smell the alcohol on his breath. Make me, he said softly, then louder, playing to his audience. What are you going to do, Gimpy? Call the cops. File a complaint. The word landed like a physical blow. Gimpy. Casual cruelty wrapped in mockery, designed to reduce her to nothing more than her injury, to make her small, powerless, broken. Around them, the few other patrons suddenly found their drinks absolutely fascinating. The bartender turned away completely, wiping down bottles that didn't need cleaning. In places like this, survival meant minding your business, meant letting things happen that shouldn't happen, meant looking the other way when looking directly might cost you. Ellie looked down at where Bull's fingers circled her wrist, thick, callous, squeezing just hard enough to leave marks, the kind of grip that communicated ownership. That said, you're mine now, and there's nothing you can do about it. Then she looked up at his face, met his eyes with a gaze that had seen things this man couldn't imagine in his worst nightmares. A gaze that had watched better men than him die screaming. A gaze that had stared down death so many times that one middle-aged biker with delusions of dominance barely registered as a threat. Last chance, she said quietly, so quietly that only Bull could hear. Let go. His smile widened. Or what? Her free hand moved. Not fast, not showy, just efficient. 3 fingers pressed into the cluster of nerves at the base of his thumb. Pressure point, textbook, the kind of technique they taught in close-quarters combat designed to exploit the body's built-in weaknesses. Bull's grip released involuntarily, his hands spasming open as nerve endings fired pain signals his brain couldn't ignore. Elle stepped back, creating distance, her prosthetic clicking softly against the floor as she shifted her weight. Bull's face went from surprise to crimson rage in the space of a heartbeat. You little, he lunged forward, all pretense of charm evaporating. His shin cracked against the booth's edge with a sound like wood splitting. The impact echoed through the bar, followed by his string of curses. Bitch! He spun, and this time there was real violence in his eyes. Not the casual cruelty from before, but genuine intent to harm. You just made a big mistake. 2 of his crew moved to flank her. The younger one grabbed a beer bottle by the neck, holding it like a club. The others stood from their table, blocking the exit. 7 men between Ellie and the door. 7 men who just watched their leader get embarrassed by a woman half his size with one leg. The equation was simple, and it wasn't in her favor. Elle's pulse didn't spike. Her breathing didn't change. She'd been in tighter spots in places where the men carried AKs instead of beer bottles, where the rules of engagement were written in sand and blood. 7 drunk bikers in a Nevada dive bar. This barely registered on the threat scale of her life. But that didn't mean she wanted the fight. I don't want trouble, she said, clearly hands visible, posture non-threatening, despite having just dropped a man twice her size. I'm leaving, that's all. I'm just leaving. You're not going anywhere. Bull stepped forward, and this time his hand didn't grab her wrist. It fisted into the fabric of her scrub top right at the collar and yanked hard. Not a grab, not a restraint, an attack. The fabric tore, not completely, but enough. Enough that the neckline ripped open, pulling down across her shoulder. Enough to expose her collarbone. Enough to expose the skin beneath. And the tattoo. It was small, precise. Black ink that hadn't faded despite the years, despite the sun and sweat and countless showers. A dagger point down, detailed enough to show the edge's serrations. Below it, in clean military stencil font, a number. 68. The room went still. Not the nervous quiet from before. This was different, heavier. The kind of silence that precedes violence or revelation or both. Bull stared at the tattoo, his grip loosening on the torn fabric. His brain was processing, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The younger biker leaned in, squinting at the number. Is that a body count? He laughed, uncertain at testing the waters. Like dudes, you bang, damn girl, 68. You've been busy. Someone else laughed. The sound was forced hollow. They were trying to recapture the casual cruelty from before, but something had shifted. The tattoo wasn't right, too precise, too professional. Not some drunk mistake or prison ink, but the kind of work done by someone who knew what they were doing, who understood that tattoos were records, monuments, warnings. Bull's confidence was starting to return, feeding off his crew's nervous energy. That what you are, some kind of confirmed kills. Elle's voice cut through the noise like a scalpel through skin. Clean, final, leaving no room for misinterpretation. The laughter stopped. What? Bull blinked. Ella adjusted her torn collar with one hand, covering the tattoo partially, but not before everyone in the bar had gotten a good look. You asked what the number means. 68 confirmed kills, combat engagements verified, hostile eliminations, while providing emergency trauma care under fire. The words hung in the smoky air like cordite. The younger biker snorted, but it sounded forced now. Yeah, right, and I'm a Navy SEAL. Ella turned to look at him. Really look at him. Her eyes moved from his face to his posture, to his hands, to the way he stood. 2 seconds. That's all it took. 2 seconds of professional assessment that peeled back layers of false bravado to the insecurity beneath. You're not, she said simply. Your posture's wrong. Your hands are soft, and you telegraph every move 3 seconds before you make it. You've never seen combat, never even finished basic training, did you? Got washed out for, she paused, eyes dropping to his left ankle, where his jeans rode up slightly, that dishonorable discharge tattoo you think nobody notices. Admin clerk maybe caught stealing from the PX. The biker's face went from red to white. She was right. Somehow, impossibly, this woman he'd never met had read his entire history in the time it took to draw breath. Bull released her scrubs, taking a half step back. You're full of... I'm a nurse. Ella interrupted, her voice still flat, still giving nothing away. That part's true. I work ER at Riverside General. But before that, before this, she gestured at her prosthetic leg, at her civilian clothes, at the ordinary person she was pretending to be. I was something else. What? Bull tried to sneer, but his voice had lost some of its edge. Some weekend warrior, I was a combat medic, Tier 1 Special Operations, 41 months deployed across Iraq and Afghanistan. 68 confirmed hostile kills while providing emergency trauma care under fire to wounded soldiers who would have died without immediate intervention. She paused, letting that sink in. They called me Desert Viper. One of the bikers, older, with a faded USMC tattoo on his forearm and the bearing of someone who'd actually served, went pale. Actually stepped back, hands coming up in a gesture that was half surrender, half warding off evil. Jesus Christ, he whispered. Desert Viper. I heard stories. They said you were dead. Elle's eyes flicked to him. Recognition flickered across her face. You served. Afghanistan 2009. Helmand Province. The Marine biker nodded slowly, still backing away from the table. I heard stories about you. About what you did. They said... He shook his head. Bull, we need to leave. Right now. I'm not running from some crippled... Bull started, but the word died on his lips, because something in Elle's expression had changed. Not anger, not fear, something colder. Something that made the temperature in the room drop another 10 degrees. Crippled, Elle's voice was soft now, dangerously soft. You want to know how I lost the leg? Kandahar 2021. Building collapsed during extraction. I was pulling my third wounded soldier to safety when the ceiling came down. Took my left leg below the knee. I still got him out. Still kept pressure on his femoral artery while calling in medevac. Still talked a 19-year-old private through applying a tourniquet to my own thigh while returning fire. She took a step forward. Her prosthetic clicked against the floor, and this time the sound carried weight, authority. The mechanical movement wasn't a weakness anymore. It was a reminder, a monument to the price she'd paid, to the things she'd sacrificed. The nickname isn't about killing, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper, but somehow filling the entire room. It's about refusing to die, about striking back from positions everyone says are fatal, about being more dangerous wounded than most people are at full strength. Bull's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out. Elle's hands hung loose at her sides, but there was something about her stance now, something that made it clear she wasn't some helpless victim. Wasn't someone to be mocked or grabbed or dismissed. She was a soldier, a warrior, someone who'd seen more violence before breakfast than these men had seen in their entire lives. "So, when you threaten me," she said quietly, "when you think you can put hands on me, when you call me Gimpy like that word means something, you're fundamentally misunderstanding the situation." "And what situation is that?" Bull managed, but his voice had lost all its fire. Elle's expression didn't change. "That underestimating the quiet ones is the last mistake people make." The door opened. Not slammed, not kicked in, just opened. Smooth and controlled, with the kind of deliberate movement that spoke of professional training and tactical awareness. The man who entered wore civilian clothes, dark jeans, a canvas jacket, but everything else screamed military. The way he scanned the room in 2 seconds flat, cataloging threats and exits. The way his weight balanced on the balls of his feet. The way his right hand hung loose near his hip, where a sidearm would rest if this were a different kind of establishment. Where a sidearm probably rested anyway, concealed beneath civilian fabric. He was followed by 3 more. Same look, same energy, wolves in different skin. They didn't announce themselves, didn't need to. The lead man's eyes found Elle's torn scrubs, found the exposed tattoo. His expression didn't change, but something hardened behind his eyes. Something that suggested whoever had torn that fabric had just made a very serious mistake. "Ma'am," he said quietly, his voice carrying the kind of calm authority that came from years of giving orders in life and death situations. "Are you injured?" Elle shook her head once. No wasted movement, no unnecessary words. His gaze shifted to Bull. "Did these men assault you?" "They were leaving," Ella said evenly, trying to de-escalate, trying to give everyone an exit that didn't end in violence or arrests or complications she didn't want. "Like hell we were." Bull started puffing up his chest, trying to reclaim some of the dominance he'd lost. "This is a private establishment. You got no authority." The lead man took one step forward. Just one, but somehow the air pressure in the room seemed to change with it. He pulled out his phone, tapped twice, and turned the screen toward the bikers. Even from across the room, Elle could see the official Department of Defense seal. "Staff Sergeant Elena Maddox," the man said, his voice never rising, never wavering. "Status reserve component, security clearance, top secret, sensitive compartmented information. Assault on her person falls under Federal Statute 18 U.S.C. 1114. He pocketed the phone. "You just committed assault on an active federal asset. That makes this a federal case." Bull's face went from red to white. "She's just a goddamn nurse. She's a decorated combat medic who saved 28 American lives under hostile fire," the man corrected. "And you tore her clothing without consent. That's assault on federal property, on federal personnel, and that means you're done." Outside, a new sound rolled in like distant thunder. Low, rhythmic, growing louder with each passing second. Rotor blades. The bartender's eyes went wide. He grabbed his phone, started dialing, then stopped when one of the tactical team members shook his head slowly. "Not a threat, just a suggestion. Sit down, stay quiet. Let this play out." The bartender sat. Bull looked at Elle with something between rage and fear and dawning comprehension. "Who the hell are you?" Ella pulled her jacket from the booth, draping it over her shoulders to cover the torn scrubs. The movement was casual, unhurried, but it served another purpose. It covered the tattoo again, hid the evidence, put the monster back in its cage. "I told you," she said quietly. "I'm a nurse. I work at Riverside General. I just wanted a quiet drink after a hard shift. You decided to make it something else. You set this up," Bull accused, his voice cracking slightly. This is some kind of—" "She didn't know we were coming," the lead man interrupted. We've been tracking her for 72 hours. Standard protective surveillance. She had no idea we were here until we walked through that door. Elle's head snapped toward him. Excuse me. He met her eyes, and for the first time she saw something in his expression that looked almost apologetic. Ma'am, we need to brief you. But first we're securing this location. The helicopter was close now. The building's windows rattled slightly from the downwash. Through the front window, Elle could see lights, not police lights, but military spotlights sweeping the parking lot in methodical patterns. Two black SUVs pulled in, blocking both exits from the gravel lot with the kind of precision that spoke of rehearsed maneuvers and tactical planning. This is insane, Bull said, but his voice had lost all its fire. All his swagger had evaporated, leaving behind just a middle-aged man who'd picked a fight with the wrong person and was now facing consequences he'd never anticipated. We didn't do anything. You assaulted a federal asset and destroyed government property, the team lead said, nodding toward Ella's scrubs. Those are issued medical uniform components, property of the United States government. You tore them during commission of an assault. That's destruction of federal property in addition to the assault charges. They're scrubs, Bull protested weakly. They're evidence now. The bar's back door opened and two more tactical members entered, moving with the same controlled precision. The Iron Scorpions were surrounded without ever hearing a command given. 7 men who'd walked in thinking they owned the place were now trapped in a net they hadn't seen being laid. The helicopter landed in the adjacent lot. Through the window, Elle could see it clearly now, a UH-60 Black Hawk matte black paint. No markings visible in the rain and darkness. Side doors open. A figure jumped out before the skids fully settled, moving toward the bar's entrance with the kind of purposeful stride that suggested someone accustomed to having doors open before they reached them. Elle's stomach tightened. She recognized the gait, the way the man carried his shoulders, the particular brand of confidence that came from decades of command. The door opened, and Commander Nathan Pierce stepped inside. He was 52 years old, silver-haired, and had the kind of presence that made full bird colonels stand straighter. He wore a tactical vest over civilian clothes, an earpiece, and an expression that could freeze nitrogen. His eyes found Elle, immediately sweeping over the torn scrubs, her defensive posture, the way she was favoring her prosthetic leg. Desert Viper, he said. It wasn't a question. Elle stood slowly, her prosthetic leg protesting the sudden movement. Commander Pierce, I thought you retired. I did. He crossed to her in 3 strides, his gaze sweeping over her again this time, with the clinical assessment of someone checking for injuries, for trauma, for anything that would require immediate intervention. Got called back. Status report. I'm fine, sir. That's not what I asked. Ellie exhaled slowly. Minor altercation. No injuries. These men, she gestured at the bikers, they're not hostile. They're just drunk and stupid. They're suspects in a federal investigation now. Pierce corrected his voice, cutting through her objection like a blade. And witnesses. He looked at Bull, and despite being 3 inches shorter, he somehow loomed. You grabbed her? Bull's mouth opened, closed. I didn't know. Didn't know what? Pierce stepped closer. That assaulting women has consequences, or didn't know she could snap your arm before you finished that sentence. Commander, Elle said, trying to inject some calm into the situation. This isn't necessary. They didn't. The hell it isn't. Pierce pulled a tablet from his vest, swiped twice, and turned it toward the bikers. The screen showed security footage, grainy but clear. Riverside General Hospital ER floor 17 hours ago. Cardiac trauma patient GSW to chest 3 minutes from bleeding out. The footage showed Elle moving like liquid between crash cart and patient hands, blur-fast calling commands to nurses twice her age. She saved that man's life. Pierce swiped to another video. This one was different. Night vision green, desert landscape. A younger Elle, both legs intact, dragging a wounded soldier across open ground, while rifle fire kicked up sand around her like deadly rain. Helmand Province, Afghanistan, Pierce narrated, October 2019. She carried Corporal Davis 300 meters under enemy fire after his squad was ambushed. Took shrapnel to her left leg, kept pressure on his femoral artery the entire way. He lived. She lost the leg, saving him. The bar was a tomb. Pierce swiped again. More footage, more saves, more moments where Ella had stood between death and the living. Moments frozen in classified files and military records, now playing out on a tablet screen for 7 bikers who thought she was just another woman to push around. 68 confirmed kills, Pierce said, slowly, his voice dropping to something that might have been reverence or might have been warning. But that's not the number that matters. You know what is? He looked at each biker in turn, making sure they understood, making sure they felt the weight of what he was about to say. 203. That's how many service members are alive today because she refused to let them die. 203 sons, daughters, fathers, mothers, walking around breathing, living. Because this woman, he gestured at Elle, did her job under conditions that would break most people. Bull's face had gone from white to gray. We didn't know. You grabbed a woman who's saved more lives than you've met, Pierce interrupted. You tore her clothing. You mocked her disability. A disability she earned serving her country while you were what? He pulled out his phone again, tapped a few times. Running guns for the Scorpions, selling meth out of that clubhouse on Route 50. Yeah, we know about that. Federal agents have been watching your crew for 6 months. We have rights, the younger biker started. You have the right to shut up, one of Pierce's team said flatly. I'd recommend using it. Elle stepped forward, her prosthetic leg dragging slightly. The adrenaline was wearing off now, leaving behind exhaustion and the ache of old wounds. Commander, respectfully, I don't want this. I just want to leave. Pierce's expression softened fractionally. I understand, but this is bigger than a bar fight. We need to talk. Outside. They left the bikers under guard, stepping out into the rotor wash from the idling helicopter. The rain had stopped, leaving the air clean and cold, smelling like ozone and possibilities. Pierce pulled out a cigarette, then seemed to remember who he was with and put it away unlit. Old habits died hard, but some rules were absolute. You didn't smoke around people who'd earned the right to lecture you about healthy choices. You disappeared, Elle, he said, using her first name for the first time. After Kandahar, medical discharge fine, but you fell off the grid. No forwarding address, no contact. That was intentional. Yes, sir. I know. He looked at her directly. And we respected it. For 3 years, we respected your choice to walk away, to be nobody special, to live a quiet life. Elle's pulse quickened. There was a but coming. She could hear it in his tone. What changed? The team you saved in Kandahar, Webb's squad, you remember them? Every face, every name, every wound she treated. Yes, sir. They didn't die, Elle. The world tilted slightly. What? The word came out barely above a whisper. Pierce's expression was gentle now, careful, like he was delivering news about terminal illness. Marcus Webb, Julia Thornton, your brother Garrett, they made it out, buried for 14 hours under rubble, but extracted alive. Wounded, reassigned, but alive. Elle's vision blurred. She blinked hard, forcing the tears back. That's not possible. I saw the building collapse. I was still inside. I tried to... You saved them first, Pierce said quietly. You dragged Webb out with his pelvis shattered. Went back for Jules with her hand crushed. Went back a third time for Garrett with half the building on fire. You got them to the rally point. Then you went back in one more time for the others, and that's when the ceiling came down on you. Elle's hands clenched. The after-action report said total loss. Everyone listed as KIA. The initial report was wrong. Confusion in the chaos. By the time they realized Webb, Jules, and your brother had survived, you'd already disappeared into medical discharge processing. They tried to find you, spent 2 years pushing every contact they had. DOD said you were discharged, medical location classified. I asked them to bury it. Elle's voice was hollow. I couldn't. I didn't want to be found. I know. Pierce pulled out the tablet again, but this time what he showed her made the world stop spinning. But 6 weeks ago, something happened that changed everything. The screen showed a newspaper clipping. Local news, small paper. The kind of story that would get buried on page 6 if it made print at all. Teacher dies in car accident. Below it, a photo. A young woman smiling, surrounded by students. 29 years old, pretty in that wholesome Midwestern way. Dark hair pulled back, eyes that looked kind. Isabel Wyatt. Elle's breath caught. I know her. I pulled her from a burning Humvee in Helmand Province, 2019. Arterial bleed. She was minutes from... Her voice broke. She made it. She survived. She went home. She did, Pierce confirmed. Got married. Started teaching high school history. Had a whole life ahead of her. He paused. Until 6 weeks ago, when her car went off the road. Single vehicle accident. No witnesses. Investigators ruled it mechanical failure. But it wasn't. Elle could see where this was going. Could feel the shape of the trap closing around her. Pierce swiped the screen. The next image made her knees buckle. An evidence bag. Inside it, a severed finger. And on that finger, a wedding ring. Simple gold band. Nothing fancy. Just the symbol of a life that had been built, a future that had been planned. a future that had been stolen. Khalid al-Rashid, Pierce said. You remember him? The name hit like a gut punch. Iraq, 2003, Fallujah. His brother commanded an insurgent cell. They were planning. L's mind raced back 21 years to smoke and fire and the weight of impossible decisions. Vehicle-borne IED, targeting the coalition hospital. 400 patients, staff. If they'd succeeded, you called in the airstrike, Pierce finished. His brother Rashid died in the initial strike, but Khalid survived, hid in a bunker while his brother burned above ground, took shrapnel, lost his right arm, suffered severe burns to the left side of his face and neck. Pierce swiped again. This time the image was recent. A man mid-40s, Middle Eastern features. But the burns were unmistakable. Scar tissue pulled the left side of his face into a permanent grimace. His right arm ended in a prosthetic below the elbow. The kind you got from military-grade explosives. The kind that reminded you every day what you'd lost. He's been building a network for 21 years, Pierce continued. Recruiting, planning, waiting, and 6 weeks ago, he made his first move. Isabel Wyatt wasn't an accident. It was a hit. Professional, clean, made to look like mechanical failure, but he took a trophy. Pierce gestured at the evidence bag, at the severed finger, because he wanted you to know. Eventually, when the time was right, Ella stared at the image, at the woman she'd saved, at the life she'd given back, only to have it ripped away by a ghost from her past. How many others? Pierce's expression told her everything she needed to know before he spoke. He has a list, Elle. 203 names, everyone you saved during your career, every soldier, every Marine, every person who's alive because you refused to let them die. He met her eyes. He's going to kill them, one by one, and he's going to make sure you know about each one. Make sure you suffer, make sure you understand what it's like to watch everyone you care about die while you're powerless to stop it. The helicopter's rotors were still turning, creating a wind that pulled at Elle's clothes, at her hair, at the careful walls she'd built around the person she used to be. Behind her, through the bar's windows, she could see the bikers being processed. Federal agents reading rights. Blake Tarrant supervising with the calm efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Why now? Elle asked. Why come to me now? Why not just? Because surveillance on you showed us something we needed to confirm, Pierce said. He pulled up another video. This one made Elle's blood freeze. It was her, leaving the hospital 2 days ago, night shift ending, exhausted, limping toward her car in the parking garage, and there in the shadows near the stairwell a figure. Man, dark hair, keeping distance but close enough. Close enough to have reached out and touched her if he'd wanted to. Close enough to have killed her. The footage continued. Ella drove away oblivious. The man watched, then pulled out a phone, made a call. Pierce froze the frame. Lip readers analyzed this. Want to know what he said? Ellie nodded, not trusting her voice. Target confirmed. Desert Viper active, proceeding to phase 2. Pierce closed the tablet. That was 48 hours ago. We don't know what phase 2 entails, but the language suggests escalation. He's been watching you, learning your patterns, your routines, and after tonight, he gestured at the bar, at the federal response at the helicopter and the SUVs and the tactical teams. After federal charges hit the news and your name gets mentioned, he'll know exactly where you are. Elle looked at the helicopter, at the open door, at the life she'd spent 3 years trying to leave behind, reaching out with rotor blades and classified briefings, and the cold equations of operational necessity. I have patients who depend on me, she said quietly. A shift tomorrow. People who... We'll handle it, Pierce interrupted, but I need you to understand something. You're not safe. The people you saved aren't safe, and the longer you stay off the grid, the more time Khalid has to execute his plan. So what do you want from me? Pierce's expression was steady, honest, the look of a commander who'd sent people into harm's way enough times to know the weight of what he was asking. Come back to base, talk to your old team, help us identify the threat, or we assign a protection detail and you keep living your life hoping whoever's tracking you doesn't decide to do more than watch. Elle's phone buzzed in her pocket. She almost ignored it, almost let it go to voicemail. But some instinct, the same instinct that had kept her alive through 41 months of deployment, made her pull it out. Unknown number, no caller ID, just a text message. She opened it. The message was simple. 2 words and an image. Found you. Below it, a photograph. Riverside General Hospital, taken from across the street. Timestamp 30 minutes ago, while she'd been here. while she'd been dealing with Bull and his crew, while she'd thought she was safe. Someone had been watching her workplace, photographing it, making sure she knew that nowhere was safe, that privacy was an illusion, that the hunter had become the hunted. Ella stared at the screen as Pierce watched her process it, as the reality of her situation crystallized into something cold and hard and undeniable. She could run, could disappear again, could change her name, her city, her entire life, could try to outrun a man who'd spent 21 years planning his revenge, or she could fight. Ella deleted the text without responding. Then she pulled her jacket tighter, covering the tattoo that had started everything, the number that defined her past but didn't have to define her future. "My team," she said quietly. "Webb, Jules, my brother Garrett. They're really alive. Waiting for you at base right now?" Pierce confirmed. "Have been since we picked up Khalid's network chatter 3 months ago. They refused to deploy without you." Elle looked at the bar one last time, at the ordinary life she'd tried to build, at the person she'd tried to become. Nurse. Nobody special. Just another face in the crowd. But that person had never really existed, had always been a mask, a comfortable lie she'd told herself to make the nightmares easier to bear. Desert Viper had never died. She'd just been sleeping. Ella turned back to Pierce and met his eyes with the same steady gaze she'd given Bull Kruger when he'd called her Gimpy. "When do we leave?" Pierce allowed himself a small smile. "Now." The helicopter was waiting. The team was waiting. Her past was waiting. And somewhere out there, Khalid al-Rashid was waiting too. Watching. Planning. Counting down to whatever phase 2 meant. But he'd made one critical mistake. He'd assumed that 3 years of civilian life had made her soft, that losing a leg had made her weak, that she was still the same person who'd pulled bodies from burning vehicles and called in airstrikes from positions that should have been overrun. He was wrong. Ella Maddox had spent 3 years learning how to be nobody, how to blend in, how to be normal. Now it was time to remember how to be dangerous. She climbed into the helicopter, settling into the canvas seat as the rotors began spinning up. Through the open door, she watched the bar shrink below them, watched the federal vehicles form a convoy, watched the last 3 years of her quiet life become something else entirely. Blake Tarrant climbed in last, pulling the door shut. Over the headset, his voice crackled, "Welcome back, Viper. The team's been incomplete without you." Elle didn't answer. She was too busy watching Carson's city fall away beneath them, the city lights blurring into streams of gold and white against the October darkness. Somewhere down there, a man with a knife and a list was watching. Somewhere down there, her brother and her teammates were waiting. Somewhere down there, the person she'd tried to bury was clawing back to the surface. And in 7 bikers sitting in a Nevada bar waiting for federal prosecutors to explain exactly how badly they'd miscalculated were beginning to understand what it meant to underestimate someone, what it cost, what it revealed. The helicopter banked east toward the mountains, toward a military base whose name didn't appear on any map, toward a reunion Elle wasn't ready for, but could no longer avoid. In her pocket, her phone buzzed again. She didn't need to check it to know what it said, could feel the weight of it, the threat, the promise. Khalid had found her, but now she was going to find him. And when she did, he was going to learn the same lesson Bull Kruger had learned tonight, the same lesson 68 enemy combatants had learned the hard way. The quiet ones aren't weak. They're just choosing their battles. And when they fight, they don't lose. The base materialized from darkness like a secret the mountains had been keeping. No signs marked the turnoff from Highway 95. No lights announced the perimeter fence. Just a narrow road that wound through high desert scrub until the landscape opened onto a compound that could have been mistaken for a corporate retreat, if not for the guard towers and the way armed sentries moved through shadows with night vision optics. The helicopter touched down on a pad surrounded by blast walls. Before the rotors stopped spinning, Elle saw them. 3 figures standing at the edge of the tarmac, backlit by floodlights that turned them into silhouettes against the Nevada night. Even from 50 yards away, even after 3 years, she knew them. The way Marcus Webb stood, with his weight shifted left to favor his rebuilt hip. The way Julia Thornton crossed her arms high on her chest, protective, guarding the space where her missing fingers had once been. The way her brother Garrett tilted his head slightly when processing something difficult, a tic that had appeared after the skull fracture, after the surgeons had installed a titanium plate where bone used to be. Elle's throat closed. "Take your time," Commander Pierce said through the headset, his voice gentle in a way that command officers rarely allowed themselves to be. "They've waited 3 years. They can wait another minute." She unbuckled with hands that shook badly enough that Blake Tarrant reached over to help. He didn't comment on the tremor, just clicked the release and stepped back, giving her space to process what was about to happen. To prepare for a reunion with ghosts she'd mourned, people she'd buried in her mind 1,000 times while they were still breathing somewhere in the world without her. The moment her boots hit concrete, Webb moved. Not running. His hip wouldn't allow that anymore, the rebuilt joint held together with 22 screws in the kind of physical therapy that redefined pain. But he closed the distance with purpose, his face older than she remembered, lined with scars that hadn't been there before, but his eyes the same. Dark, intense, burning with something between relief and rage. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough to touch, far enough to respect the space she might need, far enough to let her choose whether to bridge that final gap. "You're alive," he said. His voice cracked on the second word, breaking like glass under pressure. "They told us everyone died, building collapsed, total loss. They said you were gone." "So are you," Elle managed. Her own voice sounded foreign to her ears, like it belonged to someone else. Someone capable of speech when her entire world was rewriting itself. "I searched, after I got out of surgery. After they told me about my leg, I made them show me the casualty list. Your names were on it. All of you, killed in action." "The initial report was wrong," Webb said. His jaw worked, muscles jumping beneath scarred skin. "We were buried for 14 hours. Jules lost 3 fingers trying to dig through rubble. Garrett's got a plate in his skull from where the ceiling beam hit him. I've got enough titanium in my pelvis to set off metal detectors from across the room." He paused. "But we made it out because you dragged us out first, before the building came down, before you went back in for the others." Behind him, Jules approached more slowly, her left hand tucked into her jacket pocket, the way she always did, now hiding the absence. She'd been a pianist before the war, had played Chopin and Rachmaninoff with fingers that moved like water over keys. Now she had 7 fingers instead of 10, and the music lived only in memory. "We looked for you," Jules said quietly, her voice carrying that particular quality of controlled emotion that came from military training and too many years of swallowing grief. "For 2 years we pushed every contact we had, called in every favor. DOD said you were discharged, medical location classified. They stonewalled us at every turn." "I asked them to," Ella admitted. "I thought you were all dead. I couldn't bear the thought of anyone finding me, anyone seeing what I'd become." She gestured at her prosthetic leg, at the visible evidence of failure. "I was supposed to get everyone out. That was my job. Triage, extraction, keeping people alive long enough to reach real medical care. And I failed. You saved our asses when it went sideways." Webb cut in, his voice sharp enough to draw blood. "You dragged me out first while the building was actively collapsing. Came back for Jules while roof sections were falling like bombs. Went back a 3rd time for Garrett, even though command was screaming in your ear to abort, to get clear to save yourself." Garrett finally stepped forward, closing the gap. Elle's little brother. 35 years old now, but she still saw him as the kid who'd followed her into recruitment, who'd insisted on combat medicine, because that's what his big sister did, who'd believed so completely in her invincibility that he'd never considered she might bleed just like everyone else. The scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, a lightning strike frozen in flesh. His eyes had changed too. Something in them was different now. Harder, like the brain injury had stripped away filters most people use to process the world's cruelty. He didn't say anything, just pulled her into a hug that smelled like gun oil and determination, and all the years she'd spent thinking he was dead. Elle didn't sob, didn't collapse, but tears came hot and fast, and her shoulders shook while Jules moved in close, then Webb, until all 4 of them were holding each other on a military tarmac, surrounded by people who killed for a living. For 30 seconds, Ella let herself be held by ghosts she'd mourned. Let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, the universe occasionally gave back what it took. When she finally pulled away, Pierce was waiting at a respectful distance. Blake Tarrant stood beside him, along with 2 other officers Elle didn't recognize, all of them wearing the particular expression of people who'd interrupted something sacred but necessary. "Debriefing in 20 minutes, Pierce announced. His voice was gentle but firm, acknowledging the emotional weight while also moving the operational timeline forward. "Medical can wait until morning, but I need Maddox cleared by intelligence before we proceed with the operation." Webb's face darkened. "She just got here. Give her a damn minute to breathe." "We don't have minutes." Pierce gestured toward a low building beyond the tarmac concrete and reinforced glass that spoke of secure communications and classified briefings. "The surveillance photos I showed her are 12 hours old. Whoever's tracking her knows we pulled her out. That changes the tactical picture completely." "Conference room 2, Blake will escort you. I'll take her, Webb said. It wasn't a request. Pierce studied him for a beat, then nodded. Fine, but all four of you report in 15. This briefing affects everyone. He walked away, Blake trailing behind, leaving Elle alone with her team, her family, the people she'd thought she'd buried. Garrett broke the silence first. You look good, considering. Liar, Elle managed something close to a smile. I look like I've been living on hospital coffee and denial. So normal for you, Jules said. The ghost of humor in her voice was enough to crack the tension slightly. She started walking toward the building, and the others fell in beside her. Old muscle memory, old formations, the kind that lived in bones and nerves, and the spaces between heartbeats. How's the leg? Webb asked as they walked. Functional, hurts when it rains, aches when I stand too long. Reminds me every morning that I'm not who I used to be. Everything hurts when it rains now, Webb muttered. We're a walking weather station. My hip starts throbbing 2 hours before the first clouds show up. They entered through reinforced doors that required biometric scans, palm print, retinal, the kind of security that suggested this facility didn't exist on any public map. The interior was institutional sterile, gray walls, fluorescent lights, the architecture designed to strip away personality and focus attention on mission parameters. But someone had tried. Coffee station in the corner. A few photos on the walls showing special operations teams in dress uniform. A bulletin board with training schedules and commendations. Small gestures towards humanity in a place designed for violence. Webb led them to a conference room. Table, 6 chairs, large monitor mounted on the wall. He closed the door and the soundproofing made Ella's ears pop slightly from the pressure change. Okay, he said, dropping into a chair with the careful movement of someone whose body no longer bent the way it used to. Before Pierce gets here with whatever classified nightmare he's about to dump on us, tell us what the hell happened tonight. Elle recounted it. The bar, the bikers. Bull Kruger's hands on her, the torn scrubs exposing the tattoo. She left nothing out, and they listened without interrupting. When she got to the text message, the found you photo of the hospital taken while she was dealing with the gang, Jules went pale. Someone was there, Jules said slowly, while you were fighting off 7 bikers. While federal agents were securing the scene, someone was photographing your workplace. Show me, Garrett said. Ella pulled out her phone, but the message was gone. Not just deleted, erased. The entire thread had vanished from her history as if it had never existed. I deleted it, Ella said slowly, but it should still be in trash. Messages don't just disappear unless... Garrett took the phone, his fingers moving across the screen with practiced efficiency. Years as a signals intelligence specialist meant he knew devices the way surgeons knew bodies. It's been wiped remotely. Whoever sent it scrubbed it from your device after you viewed it. That's not stalker behavior. That's operational level surveillance. The door opened. Pierce entered with Blake and Dr. Victoria Shaw, a woman Elle didn't recognize. Mid-40s, wearing civilian clothes but carrying herself like brass. She had the kind of eyes that had read too many classified files and not enough good news. Staff Sergeant Maddox, the woman said, extending her hand. I'm Dr. Victoria Shaw, Defense Intelligence Agency. I've been tracking your case for the past 6 months. Ella shook her hand warily. What case? I'm retired. Medical discharge. I work in a hospital emergency room. Not according to our threat assessment board. Shaw pulled a laptop from her bag, set it on the table, and typed rapidly. The wall monitor came to life, displaying a photo of a man. Middle-aged, Middle Eastern features. Scarred face that looked like someone had taken a blowtorch to the left side and not stopped until the screaming did. Elle's blood went cold. Khalid al-Rashid, she said. Iraq, Fallujah, 2003. He was local militia commander whose brother you eliminated. Shaw finished. Yes and no. She brought up another photo. Same man, but in this one he was younger, unscarred, standing outside a mosque surrounded by armed fighters. Khalid wasn't the commander. His brother Rashid al-Mansour was. Khalid was the educated one. Doctor, trained in London. Returned to Iraq when the war started because family obligation demanded it. Shaw clicked again. More photos. Security camera footage from what looked like a military base. Timestamps from 2003. March 15, 2003. Coalition intelligence intercepted communications about a planned attack on the field hospital in Fallujah. Vehicle-borne improvised explosive device. The target was chosen specifically because of the casualties it would inflict. 400 patients, 80 staff members. The single deadliest attack of the war if it had succeeded. Elle's hands clenched under the table. She remembered. God, she remembered. The briefing, the satellite imagery. The impossible choice between calling in an airstrike on a residential compound versus letting a truck bomb reach a hospital full of wounded soldiers who couldn't evacuate. You called in the strike, Shaw said quietly. Precision munitions, minimal collateral damage. Rashid al-Mansour died in the initial explosion. But Khalid survived. He was in a bunker beneath the compound, severe burns when fuel tanks ignited, lost his right arm below the elbow, spent 2 years in hospitals recovering. Shaw brought up medical records, burn treatment, reconstructive surgery, psychological evaluations that painted a picture of a man who'd watched his brother die while he hid underground, like a coward who'd lived with that shame every day since. He's been building a network for 21 years, Shaw continued, slowly, carefully, recruiting former combatants who have personal grudges against U.S. Special Operations personnel. We've identified 6 individuals in his inner circle. 3 are in custody, 2 are dead. 1, she brought up a new image, the man from the surveillance photos, is here in the United States, and he's been watching you for at least 8 months. Webb leaned forward. You've known about this for 6 months, and you're just now telling her. We've been trying to identify him without tipping our hand, Shaw said evenly. Her voice carried no apology, no defensiveness, just the flat affect of someone who'd made difficult calls and learned to live with them. But after tonight's incident, that's no longer viable. The federal charges against those bikers will hit the news cycle by morning. Your name will be attached. Khalid will know we've moved you. Elle's prosthetic leg suddenly felt too tight, the junction point throbbing where exhaustion met stress. What's his endgame? Psychological warfare first, Shaw said. She pulled up more intelligence reports, communications intercepts, pattern analysis that suggested months of work. He wants you to feel hunted, watched, unsafe, then escalation. He wants to destroy you slowly, make you suffer the way he believes his brother suffered. Shaw clicked again. Wire transfer records filled the screen. But there's something else you need to understand, something that will make tonight's bar incident make more sense. Ella leaned forward. The transactions showed a series of payments. $15,000 to an account registered to Vincent Kruger, Bull, the biker who'd grabbed her. The Iron Scorpions were hired, Shaw said flatly. 6 weeks ago, instructions were specific: provoke the nurse at Scorpion's den, test her combat reflexes, record everything. Webb slammed his fist on the table. That wasn't random. He sent them. Khalid wanted to see if Desert Viper was still operational, Shaw confirmed. If you'd react like a civilian or like a soldier. You gave him his answer. Ella's hands clenched. Bull Kruger didn't know what he was walking into. No, he thought he was harassing a disabled nurse for easy money. He had no idea he was part of a terrorist intelligence operation. Shaw pulled up more documents. The federal charges against the Scorpions? They just became conspiracy to aid international terrorism. Bull and his crew are looking at 20 years minimum now. Garrett's expression darkened. Khalid's been watching her for months, testing her, building a profile. And after tonight's incident hit the news, Shaw said, after your name got attached to federal terrorism investigation, he knows we're protecting you, which means he'll escalate, Elle finished. Force my hand before his window closes. Exactly. Pierce leaned forward, which is why we need to move fast. Then he's going to be disappointed, Jules said flatly, because she's here now, protected, behind the best security in the world. For how long, Shaw challenged. She has a life, a job, patients who depend on her. We can't keep her locked down indefinitely. So what's the play? Garrett asked. We sit here and wait for him to make a move, hope he gets sloppy. No, Pierce spoke. We use Elle as bait. The room went silent. Elle found her voice first. Explain. Khalid's operative has been passive surveillance until now, Pierce said. He moved to the monitor, pulling up tactical diagrams. But with federal involvement and media attention, he'll feel pressured to act. If we control the environment, set the trap correctly, we can draw him out into a situation where we have overwhelming advantage. Absolutely not, Webb said. You're not dangling her like, it's her choice, Pierce cut in. He looked at Elle. And before you decide, you need to see something else. Shaw brought up new footage, security camera, Riverside General Hospital, timestamp from 6 weeks ago. Ellie watched herself leaving through the staff exit, exhausted, limping toward her car in the parking garage's dim lighting. And there in the shadows near the stairwell, the man from the photos. Closer than ever. Close enough to have reached out and touched her. Close enough to have killed her if he'd wanted to. The footage continued. Ella drove away, oblivious to how close death had come. The man watched. then pulled out a phone and made a call. Shaw froze the frame. Lip readers analyze this. He said, target confirmed. Desert Viper is active. Proceeding to phase 2. She closed the laptop. That was 48 hours ago. We don't know what phase 2 entails, but the language suggests escalation. He could have killed you in that garage. He chose not to. That tells us Khalid doesn't want you dead quickly. He wants you broken first. Wants everyone you've saved to watch you fall apart. Then he wants you to beg before he finishes it. The words settled like lead in Elle's stomach. She looked at the frozen image on screen, at how close the man had been, at how completely she'd been unaware that death was watching from the shadows. If we use her as bait, Garrett said carefully, what's the operational framework? What are the specific parameters and what's our contingency if it goes wrong? Pierce pulled out a folder, spread papers across the table, tactical maps, personnel rosters, timeline projections. We announced that Elle's returning to Riverside General part-time, controlled environment, hospital security augmented with our personnel embedded as patients, visitors, and staff. We make her visible but protected. When Khalid's operative moves, we're ready. And if he doesn't take the bait, Jules asked, then we escalate, Pierce said. Press conferences, media attention. Make her so public he can't resist. A man who spent 21 years planning revenge won't be able to walk away when his target is standing in front of cameras talking about the airstrike that killed his brother. Webb stood abruptly, his chair scraping across the floor. This is insane. You're painting a target on her back and hoping your security is good enough to stop a bullet. Our security is the best in the world, Blake said quietly from his position by the door, and she won't be alone. Damn right she won't. Webb turned to Elle. If you do this, we're with you. Full time, no arguments. Me, Jules, Garrett. We're your primary detail. No random federal agents we don't know. No contractors. Just us. Jules nodded. Unanimous. Garrett just looked at Elle. In his eyes, she saw the same determination that had kept him conscious after the building collapse, that had made him crawl through rubble with a fractured skull to reach the extraction point that had let him survive 14 hours of burial, because giving up simply wasn't in his vocabulary. Ella looked at the photos spread across the table, at the man who'd been shadowing her life like a disease, at the threat assessment reports and tactical plans, and all the machinery designed to turn her existence into an operation. I have conditions, she said. Pierce leaned back. I'm listening. 1, I keep working at the hospital. Real shifts, real patients. I'm not pretending to be a nurse. I am one. Agreed, Pierce said, but limited hours and our people embedded in every department. 2, my team Webb, Jules, Garrett. They're my primary detail. I trust them. They know how I move, how I think. They've bled with me. Your people can provide outer security, but these 3 stay on me directly. They'll work in conjunction with Blake's team, Pierce said. But yes, they're your immediate protection. 3, if this goes sideways, if civilians are endangered, we abort immediately. I won't let patients become collateral damage in a revenge plot. The second an innocent person is at risk, we pull back and regroup. Non-negotiable. Pierce met her eyes. Understood. Anything else? Elle's fingers traced the outline of the dagger inked into her skin beneath her jacket. When we catch him, and we will catch him, I want 5 minutes alone to explain exactly why hunting me was the worst decision he ever made. Elle, Webb started, but she held up a hand. 5 minutes, she repeated, to look him in the eyes and tell him about the 400 people who are alive because I made the call to stop his brother. To make him understand that every person he's threatened, every name on his revenge list, they matter. They have families, futures, lives that are worth protecting. Shaw and Pierce exchanged glances. Some silent communication passed between them. We'll discuss it when the time comes, Pierce said finally. For now, we have 72 hours to set up infrastructure. Elle, you'll stay on base for initial briefings and equipment fitting. Webb, Jules, Garrett, you're reassigned to protective detail effective immediately. Blake will coordinate external security. Equipment fitting? Elle asked. Blake smiled slightly. You didn't think we'd send you out there without upgrades, did you? The meeting broke up 20 minutes later after Shaw walked them through detailed threat matrices and response protocols. When the others filed out, Pierce held Elle back with a gesture. You sure about this? He asked when they were alone. No, Elle admitted, but he's not going to stop. And I'm tired of running from ghosts. Tired of pretending to be normal when normal died in Kandahar, along with the person I used to be. Pierce pulled an envelope from his jacket. Before you commit, fully read this. It's from Thomas Wyatt, Isabel's husband. He wrote it before she died. Ella took the envelope. Her hands were steady now, the shock and adrenaline from the bar having burned through her system, leaving behind the cold clarity that came from accepting impossible situations. "What's it say?" "Read it yourself," Pierce said. "But the short version is this. Isabel spent the last 2 years of her life trying to find you. To thank you for pulling her out of that burning Humvee. To tell you that every morning she woke up next to her husband, every day she taught kids about history and possibility, every moment she had was borrowed time you'd given her." His voice roughened slightly. "She wanted you to know it meant something. That the choice you made, the call you made to extract her, instead of leaving her behind to reach safer ground, that it mattered." Elle stared at the envelope, at her name written in careful script on the front. "Okay, get some rest," Pierce said, moving toward the door. "Tomorrow we start training." And Elle, he paused with his hand on the doorframe. "Those bikers tonight, the ones who thought you were weak because of the prosthetic, the federal charges are just the beginning. Once the media picks up the story, once people hear what you did in service of this country, those men are going to become pariahs. Their gang will disown them. Their community will reject them. They grabbed a war hero and mocked her sacrifice." "I'm not a hero," Ella said quietly. "You're exactly a hero," Pierce corrected. "You just never wanted the title." He opened the door. "Sleep. Tomorrow gets complicated." Webb was waiting in the hallway when she emerged. He didn't say anything, just fell into step beside her as they navigated corridors that smelled like disinfectant and old coffee, and the particular staleness of air that had been recycled too many times through military HVAC systems. He led her to a small room, bed, desk, window overlooking the compound. It wasn't much, but it was secure, safe. The kind of anonymous military housing that existed on bases worldwide, identical and forgettable, and exactly what she needed. "You don't have to stay," Ella said, testing the mattress. Military issue. Firm in the way that suggested sleep would be functional rather than comfortable. "Yeah, I do." Webb leaned against the doorframe. "For 3 years I thought you were dead. Went to sleep every night thinking about how you dragged me out of that building while your leg was hanging on by tendons in prayer. Woke up every morning wondering why I got to live when you didn't. Then I found out you were alive and hiding, and I understood why, but it didn't make it hurt less." He looked at his hands. "After we got pulled out, after the surgeries and rehab and months of physical therapy that made basic training look like summer camp, they wanted to give me a medal. I told them to shove it. How could I accept an award when my team lead lost her legs saving my ass when 2 of our people didn't make it home? When the person who deserved recognition more than anyone had vanished into medical discharge with location classified? That's not your fault," Elle said. "And Kandahar's not yours," Webb shot back. "We're going to catch this bastard. We're going to end this threat. And then we're going to figure out how to live with what we carry. Together. Because I'm done losing people I care about." Elle's throat tightened. "I don't know if I can do this. Don't know if I'm strong enough to walk back into that world. To be Desert Viper again instead of just Elle, the ER nurse." "You already are," Webb said gently. "You were never just a nurse. That was the disguise. The mask you wore to make the nightmares easier. But tonight in that bar, when that asshole grabbed you when he called you Gimpy, you didn't flinch. Didn't break. You handled it like the operator you've always been." He pushed off the doorframe. "Get some sleep. 0600 comes early." "And Elle?" He looked back from the doorway. "Welcome home." After he left, Ellie opened the envelope Pierce had given her. The letter inside was handwritten, 3 pages dated 2 months before Isabel's supposed death. "Dear Sergeant Maddox, you don't know me, but I'm married to someone you saved." Ella read it 3 times, her hands shaking harder with each pass. Read about how Isabel talked about Kandahar late at night when the memories got too loud. About how she described Ella appearing like something out of a fever dream, limping and bleeding from her own wounds, but moving like death itself couldn't stop her. About how Ella had packed Isabel's wounds while calling in air support, how she'd made Isabel promise to stay conscious, to keep breathing, to think about everything she wanted to do when she got home. "Every morning I wake up next to my wife," Thomas had written. "Every day she teaches 30 kids about history and possibility. Every night we talk about the future we're building. We're trying for a baby. We bought a house. We're planning to grow old together. None of that exists without you." The letter ended with a phone number and an address. "You have family in Seattle. Our door is always open." Elle read it again and again, until the words blurred and her hands couldn't hold the paper steady anymore. She didn't cry, couldn't afford to start because she didn't know if she'd be able to stop. Instead, she lay down on the bed, fully clothed, and stared at the ceiling, thinking about Isabel teaching kids about Thomas waking up next to his wife, about futures built on borrowed time and blood-soaked sand, about 68 people who'd tried to kill her, about 203 people who were alive because she'd refused to quit, about a man with a knife and a grudge who thought he could break her. Sleep came eventually, shallow, restless, full of desert heat and rotor sounds, and Webb's voice calling her name through rubble. She woke at 0530 to her phone buzzing on the nightstand. Unknown number, new message. Every instinct screamed not to open it, to delete it unread, to pretend the threat wasn't real if she just refused to acknowledge it. But Elle had never been good at pretending. She opened the message. A photo. Riverside General Hospital, taken from across the street. Time-stamped 30 minutes ago, while she'd been here at the base. While she'd thought she was safe behind military security and federal protection, someone was still there, still watching, still sending the message that nowhere was truly safe. And beneath the photo, 3 words that made her blood freeze. Phase 2 begins. The next 72 hours moved like a fever dream wrapped in bureaucracy and tactical planning. Ellie stood in the armory while a technician fitted her with body armor designed for her specific build. Level 3 of vest, lightweight ceramic plates, load-bearing harness that distributed weight away from her prosthetic junction point. The gear had been customized before she'd even agreed to the operation, which told her everything about how confident Pierce had been in her answer. Communications package, the text said, holding up what looked like a standard hospital ID badge. Embedded GPS tracker panic beacon, live audio feed to Tactical Operations Center. Water resistant, impact resistant. Works through concrete and steel. He handed her another piece. Prosthetic upgrade. Carbon fiber reinforcement in the ankle joint GPS chip in the heel cup emergency beacon, activated by specific tap pattern. 3 taps, 2-second pause, 3 more taps. Sends distress signal even if you're unconscious and someone else triggers it. Ella turned the components over in her hands. You've thought of everything. We've lost people because we didn't think of everything, the text said quietly. Not losing you. Webb spent those days drilling tactical scenarios, building layouts, escape routes, rally points. He moved through the hospital floor plans like he'd worked there for years, memorizing patient room configurations, supply closet locations, stairwell access points. ER has 4 exits, he said, pointing at the blueprint spread across the conference table. Main entrance here, staff exit here, emergency vehicle bay here, and a service corridor that connects to the parking structure here. We'll have eyes on all 4, but you stay away from the service corridor. Too isolated, too many blind corners. Jules focused on medical scenarios. If shooting starts, your instinct will be to help the wounded. Fight it. Your job is to stay alive long enough for us to neutralize the threat. Federal agents are trained for active shooter scenarios. Let them handle trauma while you get clear. I'm a medic, Elle protested. I can't just... You can and you will, Jules interrupted. Because if you go down trying to save someone else, Khalid wins. Every person on that list of 203 becomes a target. Your survival protects them. Remember that. Waderet worked the technology angle. Khalid's operative will try to jam communications or create electronic interference. We've hardened your gear against that, but if comms go down, you follow building evacuation protocols. You don't deviate. You don't improvise. You trust that we're tracking you via GPS and moving to intercept. On the 3rd day, Shaw called a final briefing. The conference room was crowded now. Elle's team, Blake's FBI tactical unit, hospital security coordinators, local law enforcement liaisons. 20 people whose sole job was keeping one combat medic alive while using her as bait for a terrorist with a 21-year grudge. First shift is tomorrow at 1400, Shaw said. 4 hours, ER rotation. We've coordinated with hospital administration. As far as staff knows, Elle's returning part-time after an extended leave. We've embedded 6 federal agents as patients, 3 as family members, 2 as janitorial staff. Hospital security has been briefed that you're under federal protection, but not why. She pulled up surveillance footage. We've identified 43 cameras covering the ER floor. We're adding 12 more tonight. Every angle, every blind spot. If Khalid's man breathes near that hospital, we'll see him. What about patients, Ellie asked. Real patients with real emergencies. How do we protect them if this goes hot? ER will run at 60% capacity, Shaw said. We're diverting non-critical cases to other facilities. Anyone who comes through those doors will be triaged and, if possible, moved to different wings. We minimize exposure. Webb leaned forward. And if he doesn't take the bait, if he waits us out, then we escalate, Pierce said. He pulled up a press release. Local news. War hero returns to work after losing leg-saving teammates. Human interest story. Your face on television, your name in papers. He won't be able to resist. Ellie read the press release, her stomach churning. You're going to make me famous. We're going to make you visible, Shaw corrected. There's a difference. Famous would be national news. This is local interest, just enough to force Khalid's hand. The briefing lasted another hour. Tactical protocols, communication procedures, contingency plans for scenarios ranging from active shooter to chemical attack to hostage situation. By the time they finished, Elle's head was swimming with radio codes and rally points, and the thousand ways this could go catastrophically wrong. That night, she found Garrett on the range, putting rounds through paper targets with the methodical precision of someone who'd done this so many times it had become meditation. Can't sleep either, she asked. He lowered his weapon, cleared it, set it on the bench. Keep thinking about Kandahar, about being buried under that building, about how I was sure we were going to die there. But you didn't. Because of you. He turned to face her. You came back 3 times. 3 times you went into a collapsing building because you wouldn't leave us behind. I was conscious for the 3rd trip. Saw you crawling toward me with half a ceiling beam across your leg. Saw you drag yourself forward even though every movement was shredding tissue. You know what you said to me? Elle shook her head. You said, I've got you, little brother. Just hold on. I've got you. His voice cracked slightly. You were literally bleeding out, and you were comforting me, telling me it would be okay, making promises you might not be able to keep just so I'd stay conscious long enough for extraction. He picked up his weapon again, started field stripping it, hands moving through the familiar motions. That's why I'm here. That's why I'll walk through fire for you tomorrow and every day after, because you've already done it for me. And because I'm done losing family. Ella sat beside him on the bench. I'm scared. Good, scared keeps you sharp. It's when you stop being scared that you make mistakes. He reassembled the weapon locked. The slide checked the sight picture. You trust Webb. With my life. You trust Jules. Absolutely. Then trust us tomorrow. Trust that we've got your 6. Trust that if this goes sideways, we'll get you out. He met her eyes. Trust that you don't have to carry this alone anymore. The next morning arrived too fast and too slow simultaneously. Ella dressed in scrubs that had been fitted with the armor underneath the fabric, specially tailored to hide the bulk. She looked in the mirror and saw a nurse. Ordinary, unremarkable. Just another medical professional heading to work, but the weight of the vest reminded her otherwise. The GPS tracker in her badge hummed almost imperceptibly. The panic beacon in her prosthetic clicked softly with each step. She was walking into a trap of her own design, and somewhere out there a man with a grudge was watching. The suburban convoy rolled out at 1300. Webb drove with Jules riding shotgun, Garrett and 2 FBI agents in the vehicle behind them. Blake's team in a surveillance van that looked like a plumber's service truck. 20 people moving in synchronized precision to protect one target. Riverside General Hospital rose from the Carson City skyline like a monument to modern medicine. 7 stories of glass and steel, and the accumulated hope and tragedy of everyone who'd ever walked through those doors seeking healing. Ella had worked here for 3 years, had saved lives in those ER bays, had lost patients on those tables, had learned to be nobody special in a place that specialized in crisis. Now she was about to turn it into a battlefield. The convoy pulled into the parking structure. Webb's eyes never stopped moving, scanning for threats, cataloging vehicles, noting exit routes. Stay tight, we move together. They entered through the staff entrance, Elle's badge triggering biometric readers that had been upgraded overnight. Federal agents disguised as maintenance workers nodded as they passed. Hospital security wore earpieces, now coordinating with Blake's Tactical Operations Center. The ER floor looked normal. Patients in waiting area, nurses at stations, doctors moving between bays. But Elle's trained eye caught the details. The patient in Bay 3, whose posture was too rigid, too alert. The family member in the waiting room, whose jacket hung wrong, weighted by a concealed sidearm. The janitor who mopped the same spot 3 times while keeping eyes on the entrance. Dr. Patricia Harlow met them at the nurse's station. The hospital director looked older than Elle remembered, stress lines deeper, but her eyes were sharp. Welcome back, Harlow said, her voice carrying the particular warmth of someone who'd fought administrators to make this happen. We've missed you. ER's been chaos without your steady hands. Good to be back, Ella said, surprised to find she meant it. Despite everything, despite the trap and the tactical teams and the terrorist watching, this was still her floor, her people, her purpose. The first hour passed without incident. Elle triaged a teenager with a sprained ankle, assisted on a cardiac patient, walked a panicked mother through her toddler's allergic reaction. Normal, routine, the kind of controlled crisis that made ER work simultaneously exhausting and addictive. But her skin prickled with awareness. Webb was at the far end of the floor disguised as a patient's family member, his eyes tracking every person who entered. Jules worked the administrative area positioned to intercept anyone approaching from the north corridor. Garrett was one floor up Overwatch position, coordinating with Blake's team. She was surrounded by protection, buried in layers of security, but she felt exposed, watched, like crosshairs were painting her back. At hour 2, her radio crackled. Blake's voice, calm and professional. Possible contact, male Middle Eastern features, 30s entering main lobby, moving your direction. Elle's pulse quickened, but she kept working hands steady on the IV line she was setting for an elderly patient with dehydration. Visual confirmed, Webb's voice. Not a match. Wrong age, wrong build. Stand down. The adrenaline spiked and faded. False alarm. Just another person seeking medical care in a hospital where medical care happened. Hour 3, a construction worker with a nail through his hand, a college student with alcohol poisoning, a mother in early labor who got triaged to obstetrics. Elle moved through each case with practiced efficiency, but part of her brain stayed tactical. Exit routes, weapon locations, friendly positions. You're doing great, Jules said during a rare quiet moment. Natural. No one suspects anything. Except the man who's watching, Elle said quietly. Let him watch. Every second he watches is another second we're tracking him. Shaw's team has surveillance on every vehicle in 3 blocks, every phone signal, every credit card transaction. If he's out there, we'll find him. Hour 4 approached. Elle was treating a homeless man with infected foot wounds kneeling beside the gurney to clean and dress the injury when the lights flickered. Just once. Just for a second. But every federal agent in the room suddenly went on high alert. Blake! Webb's voice over the radio tight with tension. Checking. Stand by. Ella continued working hands steady despite the spike of adrenaline. The homeless man didn't notice the sudden tension, was too focused on the pain and the relief of someone finally caring about his injury. Electrical fluctuation, Blake reported 30 seconds later. Hospital engineering says it's normal. Power grid hiccup. No cause for concern. But Ella saw Webb's expression. Saw him not relax. Saw him instead intensify his scan pattern, looking for the second shoe to drop. It came at minute 2:15 of hour 4. Code blue. Cardiac arrest. Bay 7. Elle moved automatically, muscle memory driving her toward the crisis. But Webb's hand on her arm stopped her. That's not your patient, he said quietly. Let someone else handle it. Webb, it's a code blue. And we have 3 doctors and 5 nurses on this floor who can respond, he said firmly. You stay here. You finish what you're doing. You don't deviate from your assigned area. Ellie wanted to argue, wanted to push past him and do what she was trained to do. But something in Webb's eyes stopped her. Some instinct that had kept him alive through multiple deployments. She stayed put. The code team rushed past, voices calling out, crash cart rolling, the organized chaos of medical professionals fighting death. And then 90 seconds later, another code blue. Bay 12. And 30 seconds after that, another. Bay 4. That's not right, Ella said, ice forming in her stomach. 3 cardiac arrests within 2 minutes. Webb was already moving radio to his mouth. Blake, we have a situation. Multiple simultaneous codes. This isn't natural. Confirmed. Blake's voice came back all calm, gone now, replaced by tactical urgency. Evacuate Maddox. This is a stress test. He's testing our response. Webb grabbed Elle's arm. We're leaving. Now. But before they could move, the power cut completely. Not a flicker this time. Total blackout. Emergency lighting kicked in 3 seconds later, bathing everything in red emergency glow, but those 3 seconds of darkness were enough. Ella heard the gunshots before the emergency lights came on. 3 quick cracks from the north corridor. Not the heavy boom of shotguns or the rapid staccato of automatic weapons. Single, precise shots. Handgun. Professional. Contact north, Jules's voice over radio strained. Shots fired, officer down. Webb was moving before the transmission finished, pulling Elle behind a nurse's station, his own weapon appearing from concealment. Around them, patients were screaming, staff diving for cover. Federal agents converging on the north corridor. Maddox stays here, Webb ordered into his radio. Lock down this position. I'm moving to Jules. Webb, no, Ella started, but he was already moving, leaving her with 2 FBI agents who materialized from patient rooms, weapons drawn, forming a protective barrier. More gunshots, screaming, the sound of something heavy hitting the floor. The emergency PA system crackled to life. But instead of the hospital's automated evacuation message, a different voice came through. Accented, educated, calm, Khalid al-Rashid. "Good evening, Desert Viper." His voice filled the ER floor, coming from every speaker simultaneously. "You've made this very difficult. All these federal agents, all this security. Did you really think you could hide from me forever?" Elle's blood went cold. "I have something to show you," Khalid continued. "Bay 12, I believe you'll find it illuminating." The FBI agents looked at each other, then at Elle. One spoke into his radio. "Blake's subject is broadcasting on hospital PA. How did he access? He's not in the building." Blake's voice came back tight with frustration. "He's broadcasting remotely. We're tracking the signal, but he's bouncing it through multiple relays. Bay 12 is clear according to our cameras." "It's not clear," Elle said quietly, because she could smell it now, beneath the antiseptic in the blood, in the fierce sweat of panicked patients. Something else, something chemical, gasoline. She moved toward Bay 12 before the FBI agents could stop her, drawn by instinct and the terrible certainty that whatever was there, it was meant for her to find. The curtain was drawn. Elle pulled it back. A man lay on the gurney, hospital security guard based on the uniform. Mid-40s, unconscious or dead, and on his chest, arranged with deliberate care, a photograph. Isabel Wyatt, smiling, pregnant, alive, and beneath the photo, a K-bar knife. Military issue, the kind Elle had carried in Afghanistan, the kind that had been standard equipment for combat medics. Pinned under the knife was a note, handwritten in precise script. 68 becomes 0. Everyone you saved dies knowing you couldn't protect them, starting with the teacher. Elle's hands shook as she reached for the note. The FBI agent grabbed her wrist. "Don't touch it. Evidence." But Ella had already seen what she needed to see. The guard was breathing. Unconscious, drugged probably, but alive. This was theater. Message, Khalid announcing his presence and his intent. Webb appeared at her shoulder, blood on his sleeve, but moving like he wasn't hit. "Jules is okay. Took a round to her vest. Guard down with collapsed lung. I did needle decompression, but he needs surgery." The casualties were the distraction, Elle said, her voice hollow. "The codes, the shooting, the power cut, all of it was designed to make us react, to pull our attention while he positioned his real message." Garrett's voice crackled over the radio. "I've got movement on the roof. Thermal signature. Single individual. He's Jesus, he's got a sniper rifle." "Evacuate now," Blake ordered. "All personnel evacuate Maddox to Rally Point Alpha. This is not a drill." But Ella stood frozen, staring at the photograph of Isabel. Alive, not dead like Pierce had said. The death had been staged. Federal deception to draw her out, and now Khalid knew. Knew that Isabel was alive, knew where she was, knew that Elle cared. The PA system crackled again. "You have until sunrise," Khalid's voice said. "Come to me alone or I start executing names from the list, 1 per hour. Your team, your patients, everyone you've ever saved. The choice is yours, Viper. You for them, just like always." An address appeared on the ER display screens, overriding patient information. Industrial district, abandoned warehouse. The kind of place where screaming wouldn't carry and bodies could disappear. "That's a trap," Webb said flatly. "We're not doing this. He has 203 names," Ella said quietly, "and he just proved he can reach into a federal protected hospital and leave messages on gurneys. Can jam our communications, can turn our own security systems against us." "So we call his bluff," Webb said. "We lock down everyone on that list, full protective custody. He can't hit them all." "He doesn't need to hit them all," Elle said. "He just needs to hit one, just needs to prove he can do it. And then what? We spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders, waiting for the next name, the next phone call, the next funeral." "Elle, you can't seriously be considering—" "I'm not considering anything," Elle interrupted. "I'm telling you what's going to happen. We're going to that warehouse, all of us, together, and we're going to end this." She turned to the FBI agents. "Tell Blake I need tactical briefing in 10 minutes. Full assault plan. I want every piece of intel you have on that location. Building layout, ingress routes, defensive positions, everything." One of the agents spoke into his radio. The other just stared at Ella like she'd lost her mind. Maybe she had. But somewhere in a warehouse across town, a man was waiting. A man who'd spent 21 years planning revenge. Who'd built a network. Who'd recruited killers. Who'd tested her and found her vulnerable. He was about to learn his mistake. Desert Viper wasn't vulnerable. She'd just been sleeping, and now she was awake. Underscore, 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 underscore. The Suburban cut through the industrial quarter at 80 miles per hour, rain hammering the windshield like artillery fire. Marcus Webb had both hands locked on the wheel, his rebuilt hip protesting every sharp turn, but his face showed nothing except the cold focus of a man who'd driven convoy routes through Fallujah and lived to tell about it. Ella sat in the back seat, her prosthetic leg braced against the floor, watching the city blur past through water-streaked windows. Beside her, Garrett checked his carbine for the third time in as many minutes. Her little brother, 35 years old now, with a metal plate in his skull and a scar that ran from temple to jaw like a lightning strike frozen in flesh. Jules rode, shotgun phone pressed to her ear, voice clipped and professional as she coordinated with Blake's team. Her left hand rested on the dashboard, the missing 3 fingers, obvious even in the dim light. They were driving into a trap together. Because that's what family did. That's what soldiers did. They walked into the fire for each other. 2 minutes out, Webb said, his eyes never leaving the road. Blake's team reports thermal signatures still showing 3 inside main building. Could be decoys. Could be college people waiting. Could be both, Jules added, ending her call. FBI's 8 minutes behind us. Shaw's scrambling a direct action unit from Nellis, but they're 20 minutes minimum. We're alone on this. Ellis stared out at the abandoned warehouses sliding past industrial corpses left to rot when the economy had moved on to cheaper labor overseas. The address Khalid had given led to a former textile mill, 5 stories of brick and broken windows surrounded by cracked asphalt and chain-link fence that had rusted into lace. No lights, no visible movement. Perfect kill zone. Last chance to think about this, Webb said, meeting Elle's eyes in the rearview mirror. We can still wait for federal backup. Go in with overwhelming force instead of 4 people and hope. He has 202 names, Ella said quietly. People who are alive because I pulled them out of burning vehicles, or kept them breathing while mortars fell, or called in medevac when command said abort. If I wait, if I play it safe, he starts executing them tomorrow. 1 per day until I show up, or they're all dead. She met Webb's gaze. This ends tonight. Webb held her stare for a moment, then nodded. He understood. They all did. The Suburban's engine cut 2 blocks from the target. Webb let the vehicle coast into an alley between grain silos, killing the lights, letting momentum carry them into shadow. When they stopped, the only sound was rain on metal and 4 people breathing in the dark. Jules pulled up thermal imaging on her phone, the screen's glow turning her face ghost pale. 3 heat signatures, ground floor northeast corner. Same position as before. No movement. Boot prints at the entrance showed 6 different treads, Garrett said, his voice carrying that flat affect he'd developed after the head injury. 3 thermals, 6 prints. Math doesn't work. Unless some are dead already, Webb suggested. Or positioned outside thermal range, Elle finished. Underground, behind lead-lined walls, in vehicles with engines running to mask heat signatures. She looked at each of them. He's not stupid. He knows we check thermal. He's counting on us seeing exactly what we're seeing and thinking we understand the situation. So what's the play? Jules asked. Elle pulled on the tactical vest Webb had grabbed from the base. Level 4 plates, front and back, load-bearing harness medical kit secured to her hip. We go in quiet. Establish position, assess threat. If we can extract Khalid alive, we do it. Intelligence wants him talking. But if it goes loud, if civilians are at risk, we abort immediately and pull back to federal perimeter. And if he's already executed the contingencies? Garrett asked. If he's already got people moving on the list? Elle's jaw tightened. Then we make sure he can't give any more orders. They moved through the rain like smoke, 4 shapes in tactical black, cutting across broken pavement. The mill's fence was a joke, the padlock so rusted that bolt cutters went through it like butter. The gates swung open on hinges that should have screamed but didn't. Someone had oiled them recently. Someone had been maintaining access. Garrett went first, carbine up, moving with the controlled precision of someone who'd done this in Fallujah and Kandahar and a dozen other cities whose names were still classified. He cleared the approach in sections, hand signals, directing them forward, then holding them forward again. The building's exterior matched the abandonment exactly. Graffiti layered over graffiti, broken glass, weeds through foundation cracks. But inside the loading dock entrance, the story changed. Fresh footprints in the dust. Multiple sets. Boot treads with patterns that matched military issue or tactical civilian gear. Not random scatter, but organized movement. Purpose. Webb knelt by the prints, his headlamp beam, tracking the patterns. 6 different treads like we thought. All within the last 2 hours. He looked up. And something else. Ella smelled it before he pointed it out. Accelerant, the chemical tang of gasoline or diesel fuel. Following the scent led them to a series of containers, jerry cans positioned at strategic points throughout the ground floor. Enough fuel to turn the entire building into an inferno. He's planning to burn it, Jules whispered, with us inside. After he gets what he wants, Elle said quietly. Khalid's not interested in quick deaths. He wants theater. He wants us to suffer first, then burn. They moved deeper into the structure, and the temperature seemed to drop with each step. Night vision turned the world green and grainy, transforming abandoned machinery into alien sculptures. The thermal signatures were ahead exactly where the imaging had placed them, but as they approached, details emerged that turned hope into ash. Not people, space heaters, 3 industrial units arranged in human-shaped configurations, their coils glowing bright in thermal spectrum. Decoys, bait, trap within the trap. Contact rear, Garrett said, his voice barely audible. But before anyone could respond, the world exploded. Charges detonated at their entry point, bringing down enough ceiling and wall to seal the loading dock behind them. Not enough to kill, just enough to trap, to remove their exit. Then the lights came on. Industrial floods mounted on upper catwalks slammed into life with the force of a flashbang. Ella ripped her goggles off, blinking against spots that danced across her vision. And above them, 20 feet up on a catwalk, Khalid al-Rashid appeared. He looked smaller than his photograph suggested. 5'8", maybe 160. The burns covering the left side of his face had healed badly, leaving scar tissue that pulled his mouth into a permanent sneer. His right arm ended in a prosthetic below the elbow. Behind him, 4 men with rifles, professional stance, combat veterans. On the opposite catwalk, 2 more men appeared. Between them, they dragged someone, a woman, bound with zip ties, duct tape across her mouth, face bloody from a beating. Dr. Patricia Harlow, but something was wrong. Ella's combat-trained eyes caught details others would miss. The zip ties on Harlow's wrists too loose. The duct tape applied wrong, leaving air gaps. The blood on her face, wrong color, wrong viscosity. Stage makeup, and then Harlow's eyes met Elle's. Not with fear, with apology. Desert Viper, Khalid said, his English perfect accent slight. You came. Let her go, Webb's carbine came up. Your issue is with Maddox, not civilians. My issue is with everyone she saved, Khalid corrected. But first, the good doctor has something to tell you. Harlow pulled the duct tape away. It came off easily. Too easily. I'm sorry, Harlow said, words rushing out. They have my daughter, in Baltimore. They showed me photos, surveillance. They said if I didn't cooperate, her voice broke. But I had to warn you. You saved my life. Baghdad, 2007. You don't remember, but I was Captain Patricia Morgan then. Army surgeon. You pulled me from a burning Humvee during convoy attack. Kept me breathing while... A shot rang out. Harlow dropped. Ella lunged against her restraints. Wait. When had she been restrained? Her mind caught up to the present. She wasn't restrained. Not yet. This was happening now. Khalid's voice. She outlived her usefulness. Webb's voice crackled in Elle's earpiece. The tiny one she'd forgotten was there. Harlow's wearing a vest. She's down but alive. We're coming now. Elle processed rapidly. Harlow was another saved life. Another person on the list. Khalid had been using her family as leverage, but she'd warned Elle anyway, given her the information needed. Baghdad, 2007. Captain Patricia Morgan. One more name to add to the count. Counteroffer, Elle said, her voice steady. Let Harlow go. Keep my team. Me for all 4. 4 lives for 1. Elle, no, Garrett started, but she cut him off with a look. Khalid considered this. Finally nodded. Acceptable, but you surrender your weapons first. All of them. Elle began disarming. Glock 19 from her hip. Backup .380 from her ankle. Kabar knife. She placed them on the concrete floor, each weapon making a small metallic sound. The vest, Khalid demanded. Body armor, too. Ella stripped off the tactical vest, then the level 4 plates beneath. Prosthetic, Khalid said. I've read your file. You hide weapons in unexpected places. Ella sat on the cold concrete and began detaching her prosthetic leg. Release the seal, disconnect the hydraulics. She laid it beside her other equipment, then looked up at Khalid with one leg and no weapons. Now crawl, he said softly. Let them see what the great Desert Viper has become. The words were designed to humiliate, to break her, but Ella had crawled through worse. Through Afghan sand with bullets in her, through Kandahar rubble with her leg half severed. This was just concrete. Ella pulled herself across the floor using her arms. The concrete was cold and rough. Every foot felt like a mile. Her stump dragged behind her surgical scars grinding against industrial floor. But she kept moving, kept her eyes forward. 4 lives for 1. That was the trade. She reached the door and pulled herself upright using the frame. Her remaining leg trembled. Inside, Khalid ordered. Ella entered the room beyond. Small, 10 by 10. Empty except for a chair in the center and a camera on a tripod. The chair had restraints, medical grade. 2 of Khalid's men followed her in. They didn't speak. One gestured at the chair. Elle sat. They strapped her in with efficient brutality. Wrist cuffs, ankle cuff. Chest straps cinched until breathing took effort. She was trapped, helpless. Khalid entered, circling her slowly. 3 years I waited for this moment. I took a terrorist off the battlefield, Elle said. I'd do it again. Yes, I believe you would. He stopped in front of her. Which is why breaking you will be so satisfying. He pulled out a phone, pressed a button. The camera activated, red light blinking. The world will watch this, Khalid said. Every jihadist cell will see the great Desert Viper helpless. He pulled out a case, medical equipment, scalpels in various sizes, syringes, instruments designed to extend suffering. I was a doctor once, Khalid said, selecting a scalpel. I know exactly how to keep you conscious, where to cut to maximize suffering. He held the scalpel up. Where shall we start? The arms, the remaining leg? He smiled. Or perhaps the face. The scalpel moved toward her face. The wall exploded, breaching charges, a hole large enough for tactical entry. 4 operators flooded through in a tactical stack, weapons up. Down, 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 federal agents, Khalid's men, tried to respond. But federal operators moved like water. 2 hostiles down in under 3 seconds. The third tried to use Khalid as a shield. A single shot rang out from outside. Sniper round. Took the third hostile through the shoulder without hitting Khalid. Blake Tarrant entered through the breech rifle pressed to Khalid's temple. Drop it! The scalpel clattered to the floor. You're surrounded, Blake said calmly. Your exterior team is neutralized. Your explosives are disarmed. Your network is being rolled up across 4 states. Khalid stared at Elle. You knew, this whole time. I knew you'd need me vulnerable, Elle said. So I gave you what you wanted. Made you think you were running the operation. She met his gaze. But I was never helpless. I was bait. The door opened. Commander Pierce entered with Dr. Shaw. Behind them came Webb, Jules, and Garrett, unhurt, unrestrained, weapons in hand. They'd never been prisoners. The entire surrender had been theater. We've been inside your network for 8 weeks, Shaw said, pulling out her tablet. Every phone call, every encrypted message, every name on your list. She turned the screen toward Khalid. Official communications, federal deployment orders, protection detail assignments, a spreadsheet with 203 names each flagged with protective surveillance. Including Isabel Wyatt, Shaw said quietly. Elle's breath caught. What? Shaw pulled up a photo. Isabel Wyatt, alive, sitting in what looked like a safe house, visibly pregnant, 8 months at least, wearing her wedding ring, smiling. Isabel didn't die, Shaw said. The car accident was staged. We faked her death to protect her when we learned she was targeted. She's been in protective custody for 6 weeks. She switched to another image, a severed finger. That finger belonged to one of Khalid's own men. He killed him for failing a previous operation. Elle looked at Pierce. You used me. You lied about Isabel. We protected 203 people, Pierce said gently but firmly. By letting Khalid think he was winning, we got him to expose his entire network. He gave us everything because he was so focused on revenge. So focused on you. Operators secured the building. Dr. Harlow was being helped down from the catwalk, shaken but alive. Blake's team worked on Elle's restraints. When the last strap released, Garrett retrieved her prosthetic. Together, he and Webb reattached it, the familiar ritual grounding her. When the hydraulics clicked into place, Elle stood. She faced Khalid al-Rashid. He looked smaller now, diminished. A man who'd built his identity around revenge only to discover he'd been outmaneuvered. Your brother, Elle said quietly, was planning a truck bomb, vehicle-borne IED for the coalition hospital in Fallujah. 400 patients, 80 staff members. Garrett handed Shaw his phone. She pulled up classified footage. Surveillance from 2003, Rashid al-Mansour directing men loading a truck with explosives. Marking a hospital on a map, timing guards. We intercepted the plot 48 hours before execution, Ella continued. Called in the airstrike that killed him. That hospital is still standing. The patients went home. The doctors continued saving lives. She met Khalid's eyes. Your brother wasn't a freedom fighter. He was planning to murder 400 people in a medical facility. And I would call in that airstrike again today. Khalid's legs gave out. He sagged in Blake's grip. This isn't over, Khalid said. Yes, Ella said simply. It is. Blake hauled Khalid upright. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit terrorism, multiple counts of murder, attempted murder of federal personnel, life without possibility of parole in ADX Florence. As they dragged him away, Khalid's eyes stayed locked on Ellie, but she was done looking at him. The warehouse emptied as evidence teams processed the scene. Ellie sat on a concrete block outside, rain washing over her, Webb's jacket draped across her shoulders. Jules sat beside her. Garrett stood nearby. The adrenaline drained away, leaving behind shakes and exhaustion. You knew, Jules said finally, the whole time. Ella nodded. Blake's team was in position before we arrived. They needed Khalid to commit, to give orders, expose his network, and they needed me to sell it. You could have told us, Garrett said. No, Elle replied. You would have reacted differently. Blake needed genuine fear, the kind that only comes when you believe someone you care about is going to die. Webb appeared with her prosthetic, and together they checked the connection. Media's going to explode, he said. Federal press conference in 30 minutes. Biggest counterterrorism operation of the year. And they'll want me there, Elle said. You don't have to, Jules said. Elle tested the prosthetic. It held. No, I'm done hiding. If this story protects the 203 people Khalid wanted dead, it's worth it. Pierce approached. We're offering you a position, civilian instructor, combat medicine, crisis response training. Based out of Nellis, you train the next generation. Ella looked at Webb, at Jules, at Garrett. And you three? Already signed on, Webb said. We're a package deal. Jules nodded. Garrett smiled. Underscore, 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 underscore. 3 weeks later, the story had settled into history. Bull Kruger got 22 years federal for assault and conspiracy to aid terrorism. The Iron Scorpion's MC dissolved. Khalid al-Rashid sat in a supermax cell in Colorado, and Ella stood in front of 30 combat medic trainees at a facility whose name didn't appear on any map. My name is Elena Maddox, she began. Some know me as Desert Viper. I'm here to teach you something harder than shooting while providing medical care. How to keep fighting when everything says you're done. How to save lives when you're losing your own. She pulled up her pant legs, showing the prosthetic. I lost this saving 3 people. I'd lose it again tomorrow. Not because I'm brave, because I'm a medic. We trade pieces of ourselves for whole lives. One trainee raised her hand. Ma'am, how do you deal with the ones you can't save? Elle's throat tightened. You remember them. Every single one. You carry their names. And you let that weight remind you why the next life matters. She pulled out a chain. On it hung a gold wedding ring. Isabel Wyatt's ring. The real one given to Elle 3 weeks ago. This belonged to someone I saved in Helmand Province, Elle said. She's 8 months pregnant now, naming her daughter Ilona. Elle tucked the ring away. That's not failure. That's victory. Every time you save someone, you create ripples. Futures you'll never witness. Children who exist because you refuse to quit. Training ended at 1700. Elle found a package waiting. From Thomas Wyatt. The letter inside described a memorial Isabel's students had created. A garden. 87 plants. And at the center, a Viper's bugloss tree. Blue flowers, hardy, refuses to quit. A photo showed Isabel pregnant, standing beside the tree. Students tending plants. A second photo showed an ultrasound. A tiny shape that would become a person. We're naming her Elena, the letter concluded. Middle name Viper. Thank you for my wife's life. Elle set the letter down and walked to the window overlooking the training grounds. Garrett appeared in the doorway. You okay? He asked. Elle turned. Yeah, just thinking. About the 68. She touched her collarbone where the tattoo sat. About how for years I thought that number defined me. She looked back at the photograph, at Isabel and her unborn daughter. But that's not the number that matters, Elle continued. 203. That's how many futures I made possible. Garrett stepped into the office, stood beside her. Think Isabel's daughter will join up someday? Elle smiled. If she's anything like her mother, absolutely. They stood watching the next generation train, watching them learn the skills and the mindset. Elle's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. For a moment, muscle memory screamed danger. But this one was different. A photo, the garden, Blue flowers in bloom, students tending plants, and a message. She's here, born this morning, 8 pounds 4 ounces. Perfect. Thank you, Viper. Ella saved the photo, then she called Pierce. I'm in, she said. Full-time instructor. I want to build a program that teaches combat medics how to save lives and how to live with the ones they couldn't save. Done, Pierce said. When can you start? Elle looked at Garrett at the training ground at the photograph of a newborn who existed because she'd made impossible choices. I already have, she said. That night, Ella sat in her quarters and wrote 68 names in a notebook. Every hostile engagement, every confirmed kill. Then she started a new page. 203 names, every person she'd saved. When she finished, she looked at both lists. 68 and 203, death and life, but only one number that defined her soul. Ella closed the notebook and stood. Outside, the desert stretched to distant mountains. Somewhere out there, 203 people were breathing, living, building futures. And somewhere in a federal supermax cell, Khalid al-Rashid sat in isolation. His revenge unfulfilled, his life reduced to concrete walls and failure. She touched her collarbone where the tattoo lived. 68, a reminder of the violence she was capable of. But it wasn't the number that mattered. 203, that was the number written on her soul. That would define her legacy. 203 lives saved, 203 futures made possible, 203 reasons she'd do it all again tomorrow. Desert Viper had come home, not to the desert, not to the war, but to the work that mattered, training the next generation, passing on the skills and the stubborn refusal to let death win. The fight wasn't over. It never would be. There would always be people who needed saving, but she wasn't carrying it alone anymore. She had her team, her family, her purpose, and she had 203 reasons to keep fighting. That was enough. That would always be enough.